If there's one thing that could support your gut, improve your blood sugar, reduce inflammation, and help prevent chronic disease, it's fiber. And yet, 9 out of 10 people aren't getting enough.
If you're dealing with chronic illness or autoimmunity, fiber helps reduce systemic inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and improve immune balance, which are all foundational for healing. So let's dive into all things fiber, the myths, why you need it, and how to work with it smartly, especially if you're dealing with a chronic illness. I love that we're digging into this topic after our last episode on protein, because I don't know about you, but in my coaching practice, I find that the protein conversation and the fiber conversation kind of go hand in hand. And that when you try to increase one without the other, that's where things can tend to go a little wrong.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of confusion that goes on between what types of fiber, if people aren't aware of there even being different types of fiber and what they do in the body, and why increasing it too quickly can also have an adverse effect. So I feel like this is, yeah, quite a nice little follow-up from the last episode.
Yeah. And so if we jump right into why we need fiber, I know there are so many conversations out there, especially right now with so much going on around the carnivore way of eating, which
And
basically leaves out fiber entirely. Let's jump right into why we need fiber. So if we're talking about the conversation of chronic illness, things like autoimmunity, things like IBD, so much of that is coming back to our gut health. And so fiber is our kind of primary support for a diverse microbiome. We need fiber. We need a variety of plant fibers, especially to create that diversity in our microbiome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can really achieve that with anything else. Like there isn't a substitute for a fiber-rich diet.
no, and unless, so once you've established what your triggers are, etc., if you don't work on rebuilding your gut microbiome, then you're never going to be in a stable, strong position to be able to take on different foods that you might be eating. Say you go out for something to eat and you're eating, foods that you don't normally eat, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm having a massive flare up. You're never going to get to a stable position where you can actually start enjoying your life and enjoying different foods that are going to nourish you, as well as living and having a good quality of life where you can actually handle different types of food as and when they come around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've spoken about this before with things like low FODMAP diets, elimination diets, kind of shorter term dietary interventions. But that's one of the dangers, right? When we start just removing foods because we're being triggered by them, if we don't kind of complete that protocol and start eventually adding things back in and increasing our variety, we're never going to get to that place of having a resilient gut, having a resilient microbiome.
Exactly. And you can't really live life until you're in that position, because if you're not creating homeostasis within the body, then if you chuck a load of stuff at it and overwhelm it, it's going to have an adverse effect just like anything else. So understanding fiber and why it matters and what it does and how it supports you in multiple different ways is really important. And I know we've spoken a little bit about the carnivore diet, but I feel like this is going to back a lot of that stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's so easy to get kind of sucked into these fads when everybody's speaking about it, especially with social media now. And it can be they can make these claims that sound really good and can entice people to try these type of severe dietary interventions. But
Mm.
I think if you start viewing these types of diets as a a short-term intervention versus a long-term lifestyle, they start to make a lot more sense. So yes, people can start to feel decreased symptoms when they move to a carnivore diet or to a autoimmune paleo or keto type protocol because we're eliminating so much of the triggers or the
Mm.
inflammatory type foods. But yeah, if we view them as a short-term intervention versus a lifestyle, I think that's just everybody would be better off if we kind of positioned it that way.
Yeah, and when you're in a vulnerable position, then it's easy to get sucked into those kind of things because you do just want a quick fix because you're in a desperate state, you know. We've been there, so we fully understand how you're feeling if you are in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's number one. You need fiber to feed your gut microbiome. Number two is fiber is great for blood sugar balance. There's more and more awareness around the blood sugar conversation and what happens when you are insulin resistant. And we have so many people ending up with type 2 diabetes and all of the associated diseases that kind of come around that blood sugar conversation. And so, simply by adding in more fiber to each meal, you can really help your body to slow the digestion of those carbohydrates, which also helps with keeping you feel satiated and keeping your energy feeling more balanced throughout your day, which can also help with weight loss if that's a goal.
What we don't want is you crashing out and then maybe reach for foods that aren't going to serve you just because you feel like you're just completely depleted. That doesn't coincide with healthy habits and really learning how to live life in terms of longevity and also disease prevention, huge and totally underrated. But there's so much research that links high fiber diets to lower risk of things like heart disease and strokes, and like you mentioned, type 2 diabetes and even some cancers. And a lot of people forget that disease prevention is something that we strive for, not only to educate throughout the healing journey, but also to get you into a position where you're making healthy choices habitually and passing that down into your friends, into your family.
Right, because we tend to be so reactionary, especially in medicine, where we don't address disease until it's present. We don't get
Exactly.
taught disease prevention. We don't get taught how to eat for disease prevention. And yeah, I love that we have these conversations because it is so crucial. And something like learning more about fiber and how to incorporate it into your daily meals can have such a preventative effect for all the reasons that you just listed.
Exactly. Because there's nothing worse than randomly getting symptoms out of the blue and going to the doctors and getting a diagnosis that has ultimately just turned your life upside down when you could have done things years in advance that would have helped to prevent something like that from happening. So, yeah, zooming out and looking at it from a different perspective, I think it's really important for us, especially on this platform, to help you to implement those types of choices now so that, you know, once you get on in life and older, then these things aren't going to happen.
Why don't we jump into the types of fiber? Because not all fiber is created equally. And if someone tells you that you should be eating more fiber, sometimes we can just associate that with adding in a fiber supplement or, say, eating more vegetables and beans. But why don't we break down soluble fiber versus insoluble fiber? Insoluble fiber, those fiber compounds that our body has a very hard time breaking down, that kind of acts like I think of it as like a broom, that kind of sweeps things out of your digestive tract. Soluble fiber is the opposite. Soluble fiber is the type of fiber that does get broken down, but creates almost like a gel like substance. And both are important in our digestive system, in our immune health, in our gut health. But it can be really important to know the distinction because if I relate this back to my journey at diagnosis with colitis, I started reading information online about how you should avoid fiber when you're in a flare up. And I was told things like eat white bread and kind of all of the opposite things that you are told are healthy, right? You're told not to eat white bread, to choose higher fiber foods. And so it can be really confusing in those moments. And if we don't make the distinction between soluble versus insoluble fiber, we can just get stuck in this trap of thinking, oh, well, I'll just eat a bunch of highly processed convenient foods because they're lower in fiber, which is not the solution, right? So recognizing that during a time when you're in a flare up or you're experiencing digestive distress, then maybe avoiding those insoluble fiber sources at that time when your body's in that kind of distress is a better idea, but you can lean into those soluble fibers.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually going to help you move out of the flare way quicker than just generically eating whatever type of fiber and finding that your flare up is just continuing and it's not getting better. So this is where fiber manipulation is really really key. And also, just to follow on with that, there is something else called resistant starch, and that is a essentially a type of starch that ferments in the colon, and this feeds beneficial bacteria for sure, and it produces short chain fatty acids that heal the gut lining. This is found in like cooked and cooled potatoes, green bananas, lentils, things like this. But again, volume matters when it comes to things like lentils, especially when you're in a flare up. So going back to what Amanda said, it's really key to just be aware of what type of fiber does what in the body, and then manipulating that around your symptoms at that time. It will really help you to move out of the flare as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so not looking at fiber because it often is just addressed as fiber, which is a pretty
Yeah.
big blanket term.
Yeah.
So not
Hmm.
looking at it in that black or white way that I got stuck in, that trap of low fiber versus high fiber, it's more nuanced than that. There's more to understand. And I love that you brought up the resistant starch and things like adding in lentils into your diet. The dose really does matter. So many people, myself included, I fell into this exact same thing where someone said lentils are great for you. They're a great health food. And so then you run out and buy 2 pounds of lentils and you make a big lentil stew and you eat that for 3 days in a row, and then you wonder why you feel horrible and you're bloated and you're gassy and you're like, oh, I thought this is good for me. Especially with fiber, starting low and going slow is always going to be better than just rushing in, and you can have
Mm.
too much of a good thing and then experience all sorts of symptoms as a result.
But not to take them negatively at the start, and having self compassion throughout the journey. So, this kind of symptom is feedback, and you'll learn what your body can take and what it can't, and just making those really small little adjustments as you go. And again, having self compassion during these moments and moving away from the all or nothing mindset, but just taking it as feedback and adjusting as you go, but doing it very, very, very slowly.
Mhm. And and also being willing to experiment a little bit because everybody is individual, right? And different people react to different foods. So you can try adding in one form of fiber, let's say, and maybe that doesn't work that well for you in the
Mm.
moment that you're in. But I really love food journaling. I really love tracking, using tools to track your symptoms and track what you've eaten and to see those connections, because maybe it's not, once again, going back to that black or white thinking, maybe it's not the fiber Maybe it's
Mm.
that specific food that you tried that you had a bit of a reaction to. And there's so many others that you can
Mhm.
substitute in and maybe have better results with.
Yeah, exactly. And just a little tip also, if you are increasing your fiber, then don't ignore your hydration at this point. Fiber needs water to do its job. So if you're increasing fiber without drinking more fluids, then you can actually worsen things like constipation, which we want to move away from. We don't want you to have a dysregulated bowel anymore. So just a little tip there. If you are going to start increasing your fiber, then really just pay attention to your hydration intake as well.
Yeah, that's a crucial tip. That's great.
Here are some easy ways to eat more fiber and incorporate this simply into your diet. So, what you can do, number one, is that you can add beans or lentils to one meal per day. Again, if you're struggling with flare ups and you're not in a stable state, then please just be aware of the volume and don't be eating lentils or beans every day because you could quite potentially suffer with quite a bit of gas and discomfort.
Yeah, definitely the dose matters. Even if you're starting with adding a half a cup to a cup of lentils to a soup or stew, even starting
Mm.
there can be
Yeah.
beneficial. And you can move up from there, and you will likely experience less symptoms by doing
Yeah.
it that way.
And also, like Amanda said, journal it, put beans or lentils into one meal, say on a Tuesday, journal how you felt afterwards, including the day after and the day after that, just so that you can see whether that is a trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, adding in fruit into your diet, whole fruits rather than choosing a fruit juice. Obviously, you're going to get the fiber, the benefit of the fiber in the fruit versus just the juice. Another great little tip for someone who is in an active flare or has IBD or other digestive type symptoms, also cooking fruits can be a really great way to introduce the fruit fibers into your diet, but making it a little easier for you to digest. So I'm a huge fan of like stewed apples and things like that. Super, super beneficial. And you also get the benefit of like the pectin that gets released from the fruit.
Yes, I give that to all my clients and they love it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a treat. Like having some stewed apples in the morning to me feels like a dessert for breakfast.
I love that.
Like you're
Give me
doing
dessert for
something bad, but it's so good.
nutty little stewed apple.
Everyone loves a naughty little stewed apple.
So choose whole grains like oats, quinoa, or brown rice. Ironically, I literally just posted a reel about porridge and oats and how you can use them to your advantage when you're not in a flare up and information on that. And people comment saying oats are really bad, oats
Mm,
are the devil, oats really screw my gut up. And it's like, read the caption.
yeah.
They're not evil, guys. They're really good for you, but you just need to be aware of, when they're suitable to eat. And yeah, not eating them necessarily when you're in a flare up. Maybe swapping that out for some cream of rice, depending where you are in the world. But things like quinoa, great. And brown rice, a little bit harder to digest than white. So again, just being aware of what your symptoms are doing and how you're feeling at that time. But if you're in a stable position, go for the brown rice. It's super delicious.
It's so funny that you had so many people reacting to that post because that's just a perfect example of what we're talking about, this black or white thinking and villainizing foods. It's maybe not the food, but maybe it's the timing of when you're
Yeah.
choosing it versus maybe when you should skip it. And that's why people who have the benefit of working with a practitioner that's skilled in these things is so much better, such an advantage because if you fall for all of this, all of these comments and the black or white thinking that you read on the internet, you would literally be like trying to survive on ice because everybody has a differing opinion that some food is bad or good.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like this is why we promote a personalized approach, and the knowledge that you're going to build through learning how to personalize things like your nutrition will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Another good little tip for adding fiber. I love the idea of adding in flax seeds or chia seeds if you can tolerate them. That's something that's so easy that you can do, that you can add into a smoothie, that you can add into your oats or even your stewed apples. It's just a quick easy throw in ingredient. Once again,
Mm.
start low, go slow. We don't need to be adding 3 tablespoons of chia seeds because the internet told us it was good for us.
Yeah, don't do that. And if you are looking for more gentler options, then try roasted carrots or maybe mashed sweet potato or white potato. If you are in a flare up, then that's going to be a little more gentler for you.
Mm.
So start low, go slow. Your gut microbes will adapt and they will be very grateful.
I think that cooked vegetables are, I will say that they're a superfood. Cooked vegetables are one of the most underrated things that you could be putting in your body. I think it's funny how so many people, if they're attempting to eat healthier, will turn to salads or the raw veggies. And for someone who has digestive issues, that's not always the best choice. A lot of people that are in a state with their digestive system where it's really in a precarious situation will notice they eat salads and it goes right through them. They're noticing undigested food in their stool. And cooked vegetables, on the other hand, are just so beneficial, so easy to prepare. Throwing a bunch of carrots in and roasting them, like it's just delicious. It's food prep friendly and just so kind on your body, so gentle on your body.
Yeah, it is. And please don't eat salad if you're suffering because it's so sharp in the bowel.
No, no, definitely
No.
not.
Cooked ready for the win, absolutely. Caramelize them, delicious. So yeah, next time you hear just eat more fiber, then we want you to remember that it's not just about the quantity, it's not just about the quality, it's about the type and the timing and your unique gut situation. So start small, drink plenty of water, focus on things like soluble fiber if your gut is sensitive, and gradually work towards a variety of different ingredients as your gut heals. It's not a one size fits all machine, and neither is fiber.
And if you have any questions on fiber, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to message us on Instagram and ask us your fiber questions. We would love to give you our thoughts and help out if we can.